the way they put up numbers, they've scored 162 points and have given up 28. The only thing that lacks for Mineral Ridge is their strength of schedule right now. And I think that's the reason that teams don't want to put them in the top 10, because you got Pie Valley, who's not very good this year. We know Orange is kind of struggling. Newton Falls and McDonald, a lot of those have losing records.
Okay. I'm holding up 2. Why do you think I'm holding up 2? That's how many games teams that have played Mineral Ridge have won.
Yeah.
And that's a tough sell. Jamie Thompson was quick to point that out.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like quick to the point, no fake, and cooking them seeds like a pound of bacon, right? That was, it was very quick. And I get it. Like, there's 4-0 teams that probably should get more recognition. Jackson, Milton.
That was my next one.
That's a big one, man. And you and I talked about that earlier.
But it's the same thing.
It
Jackson
is.
Milton, because Latonia's winless. Newton Falls struggling, although I thought they were going to be really good this year. I really did, with their running backs and their defense, but they've lost some heartbreaking games. LeBray struggling this year. Western Reserve, they barely got by 1 point, and Reserve's 1-3 this year with a win over Liberty. So, Lowville's their biggest test. If Jackson Milton can prove to everybody that they are good enough to beat the Rockets at home, they deserve a top 10 spot, in my opinion.
Yes.
Like,
I without a doubt.
Like, if they're going to beat Lowville, they deserve to be in there.
Southern has more points than Lowville and ranked higher in the same region. And again, Southern's one of those teams too.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with Southern, I think, is people don't recognize them, right?
They're not
new team in YSN. They're not familiarized with the players, and they should be now, because Morris just won the Big Dog of the Valley by a landslide. A landslide. And I think they deserve some respect on their name. However, and here it is. Boom. Valley has had some schedule issues until the win against United. And look what we said this. With whoever won that game they were going to be in, because they had the upper hand. That was the early, I think, championship for that particular conference in the EOAC. So, and not to put Southern out of it, but now you've got a real championship that you've got to take place. And those teams got to play each other too, by the way.
You know what? Southern is going to have plenty of opportunities to prove themselves this season. They're going to have plenty of opportunities to get into that top 10, potentially top 5, because they got Valley Christian in week number 7. And then they got United to finish off the season in week number 10. So, they're going to face 2 of the big dogs that are in that EOAC conference. And they got Columbiana coming up next week. I don't know if that'll be enough to get them in the top 10 coming up, even if they do improve to 5-0 with a win over Columbiana. And then you're taking on Wellsville, who's been pretty good this year, and then Latonia. So I think it's going to be week 7 where Southern's going to have a chance to creep in, unless there's some dramatic losses.
We're going to talk about the Latonia situation later on in the show. But the big thing, Rich, is you look at that week 10, you said that United plays Southern.
Yep.
East Palestine plays Valley. So Valley's going to have – I don't want to say that it's going to be an easy win, because the Bulldogs just won their first game in 2 years. But Valley's going to have the edge going into week 10, because, number one, they're going to know if they're in the playoffs, which they should be. D6, Kirtland's waiting. But from a conference perspective, they're going to know quickly kind of where they are as a possible conference champion. Because right now, you look at the top of the standings, and Valley has an eagle-eye view of the rest of the conference, because they're sitting there going, the Battle of the Eagles, we took it. And that was a very good, and I will say this 100 times out of 100, a very good United team. And they were big, like huge. Like, I know I'm a little guy, I'm a short guy, but when you walk on the field, my goodness, they were towering. And they were like pros. It was like watching a college game. But Valley did not back down. It was a great game to watch, and congratulations to Coach Hake and the entire Eagle team and the entire school over at Valley Christian, because I know that was there's a lot of people that'll look at that and say, okay, that's a win. It's a week 4 win. Who cares? That was a program win. That was a big time win for Andy and for the entire school. So congratulations to all of them. Amo chiming in, says underrated game this week, EP versus Wellsville. He likes that game. We'll talk about it. I mean, I think Wellsville has athletes.
Good, man. I mean, they shocked me with that win this week.
Columbiana?
I thought Columbiana was going to win. I really did. And Wellsville came out and they beat them pretty good.
How about Coach Spate still after win number 200?
I know. I don't think they're going to get it this week either against Southern.
You don't have to wait for my pick, but I'm probably leaning towards you. And that, I mean, Southern's good.
They're good.
Southern's very good.
They've always been good, though. Even before they were on the YSN banner, because we had so many teams in their conference and they match up so many times, we always talked about Southern and how good they were defensively. And, a lot of people thought we had Southern as a YSN school, including some of our own, because of how many times we've talked about Southern, right? And, they're very popular on our network when it comes to talking about their defense and a lot of their athletes that they have, and they're doing it again this year. They're off to a perfect start.
Rich Wright is killing it with the wing tee. Everywhere he goes, he makes a success out of it. All right, we talked about teams outside looking in. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Southern for a second. What do they have to do to get in? I mean, it's got to be a win versus Valley now, right?
It's got to be a win in weeks number 7 and weeks number 10.
Yeah,
because strength of schedule is going to be a problem for Southern coming up with Columbiana, who's winless. I think Wellsville, if they do beat East Palestine, that could be a quality win. Mm-hmm. And then Latonia, their situation right now, which we'll address later. So they might have to wait a couple weeks to get in the top 10 unless you've got a West Branch that would maybe fall or an Ursuline that would fall out again. But I doubt you would see West Branch or Ursuline losing again until later on in the weeks.
All right, let's turn the page. Who has the most to win this week? When you're looking at the whole slate of games, who can maybe make an impact and find themselves on the power rankings, or who can make an impact and really impact their future? We're talking playoffs, Rich.
I think first off, and we touched on it a little bit, but we're going to expand on this topic, Jackson Milton and Lowville. I think those two teams, if they could pick up a win in week number 5, that does a lot, not for just our power rankings, but for their playoff spot when it comes to their divisions. Because right now you got Jackson Milton, who's looking at their schedule saying, you know what, we're able to squeeze by Newton Falls by 2. That ball game came down to the last possession. We squeezed by Western Reserve by 1 point, 22-21. And looking ahead, they still have Mineral Ridge and Springfield on their schedule. So if they could take down Lowville right now, you play Sebring, and then you prep for Mineral Ridge. So I think if Jackson Milton can come up big at home against Lowville, they could really cement a good spot in their playoff rankings in that division.
What about that Springfield Mineral Ridge matchup? To me, that's the matchup that whoever wins that game really gets a lot of momentum going into the second half of the season. And probably, I don't want to say if Springfield wins, they cement their spot in the postseason. But, Rich, if they go on a 6-0 run here, I think you got to at least have the idea of, here we go again.
Put that comment up there.
Here we go. Sebring is a trap game, Richie. For who?
I don't know. I think he's referring to Jackson Milton.
Oh, boy. Amo.
That's a pretty bold take.
That is a hot take.
No, but I agree with you going back to that Springfield game, because if Springfield is able to pick up a big victory against an undefeated Mineral Ridge team, changes their season. Because right now, they're down in the dumps. They've lost a couple tough ones, including the one to Lowville where they were leading in that first half. So, they're kind of desperate for a win right now, especially on the road. But Mineral Ridge, they need to keep this train rolling. And, if you could go 5-0, but what hurts Mineral Ridge, in my opinion, and when you said it earlier, when you pointed up too, if they do beat Springfield, yes, it helps because they're still undefeated, but
you still got an offer.
Yeah, it's an offer.
You're still teams with 2 wins.
Yeah, which hurts
unless they one of those teams wins it. But here's the other thing that's interesting to me when you look at that particular game. You look at a Springfield team that is 0-4, back against the wall, D7, where we've seen some crazy things happen in D7, like Steeler Bengal like things happen in D7. When that comes to fruition, can Springfield still make a run here?
It'll be tough. It will be tough, I think, because Springfield, just offensively, they just don't have much, and I think that's been the problem. I mean, I think Rourke's great and they've got one other weapon, but it's not like they have been in the past
Gardner,
with their
yeah.
offensive line. And Shondell Gardner's great on the outside, but outside of those two, I think they've struggled, on both sides. So I never want to count a team out like Springfield because they've been so good historically and they find ways to win. But I'm going to pull up their schedule, and looking at their schedule coming up, they've got some winnable games. Like after Mineral Ridge, there's a lot of bright spots in this schedule. I mean, Waterloo's a winnable game. Western Reserve, Jackson, Milton will be tough, and then Sebring. So this is a big opportunity for Springfield to kind of turn that page. If they could go 1-4 and finish out and somehow find their way into the playoffs with a winning record, could be a dangerous 15, 16 seed.
So when you look at Lakeview, a team that is capturing our hearts here at YASN because they took a beating for so long, and they are red fire right now. Lakeview, huge opportunity this week versus Girard. Maybe a trap game for Girard with South Range waiting in the wings at 6. You feel the same way?
I do. I think Siggy makes a good point here. And, shout out to him, by the way. He's leading our YSN picks right now. So if there's anybody that knows the Valley in football, it's him. He's got 110 wins and 24 losses through 4 weeks of picks. So
he cheated.
I
don't know how, but he cheated.
No, but, I do agree with him. I think Lakeview beating Niles, and, I'll talk about this a little bit later on in one of the coaches of the week. I think Coach Bellino is going to have to win that. 21-13 win in the NE8 over McKinley, and then you move forward and you take on Girard at home. You have so much confidence after a big win against Liberty, a big win against Niles. They beat LeBray to open up the season, barely lost to Garfield by 10 points, which was a lot closer than it looks. So I think this is a team that has a lot of momentum, and especially after last year and a disappointing season, this is kind of the Bulldogs' chance to show everybody, hey, we're still here, especially like they were in the past, if they could pull off the upset and beat Girard at home.
Amos says, if they beat Ridge and Jackson Milton, would that be enough for the playoffs?
If they beat Ridge and Jackson Milton, it depends what Jackson Milton does the rest of the way, in my opinion.
Yep. But that's two teams, again, we talked about that, that have wins, but they don't have those quality wins that you're looking for and can make all the difference in your region. Go to Joe Idle.
See, when I'm looking at Joe Idle right now, Division 7 in the bottom tier is really struggling. You've got 14 through 16 who have 1-3, 2-2, 2-2. So, there's plenty of opportunity for Springfield to come in, and if they could win 4 or 5 games to end the season, they slide right in there. And
they might not be a 14 seed.
Yeah, they might not even be 16. They could be tied for 14th or even 13th at some point.
It's going to be fun. Here's two teams that I want to talk about real quick that actually played each other to start the season. Salem, Crestview. Salem was on the power rankings, lost to Tri-C. Now they're out because if you remember right, and you and I talked about this as well off camera, Tri-C is a team that South Range beat. Division 5 South Range beats Tri-C, and Salem, Division 4 team, can't get it done. No. So there's you want to look at a quality opponent. Tri-C is it, but unfortunately for Salem, they come up short.
Yeah, that loss hurts them big time, in my opinion, because of South Range, like you said. That's a Division 5 team that comes in and is able to beat, Tri-C, and then Salem drops at home to them. So I think that hurts a lot when it comes to their strength of schedule. And I think it also hurts that they barely were able to scrape by Crestview in week number 1.
Yep.
And they've had some troubles offensively. Kind of surprising. We kind of talked about this with Coach Johnson and everybody in their staff. Like, we were expecting another offensive juggernaut performance from the Quakers this year, and it just hasn't happened, and it hasn't clicked yet. I think it will at some point. And once the Quakers are able to get going, I think they could find themselves back into this top 10.
Amos says they start conference play with Alliance, who they struggle with as well, and I think that's no secret. We've seen that. And that was that crazy game last year. I believe that Salem had it all won, and Alliance just walked down. I think maybe Blaze X-Line dropped the pass in the end zone to win it.
And Alliance, they already whooped on Niles earlier, and that was kind of the big question mark coming into the season. I know when we were doing our weekly picks, everybody picked Niles. Nobody was familiar with Alliance, and they came in and they beat them up.
That was a company pick.
Yeah.
Let's go. I want to talk Crestview, but I want to make sure I know their schedule. Who do they have?
Crestview coming up. So they're 1-3, and they're going to take on Liberty, Brookfield, and LeBray.
Okay, so Crestview wins 63-0 last week.
Yeah.
Liberty, Brookfield, LeBray. Liberty, that's a winnable game. Brookfield's going to be a tough game for the Rebels. And you said LeBray, that's a winnable game. Crestview, I think, has the most to win this week. They had the most to win last week, and they did not mess around when it came to Campbell. They came in, they absolutely laid it to the Red Devils and walked out triumphant as all can be. I mean, but there's people making a push for Crestview. Nobody wants Crestview on that power rankings more than I do, because that means that they're turning things around again. You know what I mean? But I think there's an expectation with Crestview that they still have this powerful offense from Anthony Cusick for the last 3 years, and it's just not clicking right there. The rushing is there, the running is there, but the Rebels haven't clicked yet. And maybe, just maybe, they clicked in week 4, and now the Rebels are back to what they're used to doing in business as usual. But Crestview's a team that I think they've got a lot to win this week, Rich, when they play Liberty. But Liberty also a team that has been struggling, looking to get back on track, and they can use this as kind of a springboard.
Yeah.
Because when you got Brookfield waiting in week 6,
it's tough.
It's hard not to look that direction.
I think for Crestview too, if you look at their losses, they're quality losses, right? Southern losing 12-7, United losing heartbreaker at the end.
4 seconds, yeah.
With 4 seconds left, 42-39. Salem 17-7. I mean, all 3 of their losses are within a possession and a field goal, right? So I mean, it's been a tough go for Crestview. They're looking back at the early slate of their schedule, saying we could be sitting 4-0 right now if we execute down the stretch. So I think the Rebels kind of took a lot of that frustration and anger out on Campbell this past week, beating them 63-0. And, Liberty's been struggling. I think they're going to take care of Liberty. And then Brookfield's going to be their staple game. Are we really back to where we want to be if they could beat Brookfield? And that kind of brings me to my next point with Brookfield. That's a team that probably feels slighted a little bit because they have gotten zero recognition in the last 3 weeks.
They were on the start.
They
got booted quick.
They got booted quick, and I think people lost faith quickly in the Warriors after that loss to Ursuline. And then Springfield they beat. Western Reserve, they really put it to Western Reserve, really put it to Liberty. They're going to take on Campbell. They're probably going to be 4-1 heading into Crestview. So
that's a team that I'd love to see on the top 10.
And I think it's going to be so tough for Brookfield to convince everybody, hey, we're back to where we were before the season, preseason hype, because like you said, everybody fell off that boat right away.
Does Brookfield play Louisville?
Brookfield no.
Okay, I was going to say that would be a matchup.
They play Garfield in week number 9.
Ooh, baby.
Yeah.
Hold on to your hats for that one.